Welcome back to Built Fabrications, and this is my log splitter. So a little backstory about this log splitter. It's a 35 ton and it has a bad seal on it for the cylinder. It was leaking last year whenever I was using it. I did start breaking it down. I worked on it for about a week, ran some problems trying to get it apart, and ultimately I ended up walking away from it. Well, today I'm walking back up to it, and I really want to get this thing taken apart so that I can get the cylinder repaired and then get this thing back to work. So I'm going to bring you guys in. I'm going to show you what all I've done so far and kind of explain what we need to do and what the problem was. All right, so this is a pretty stout log splitter. And like I had said, I started to get it apart, and the issue that I ran into was trying to get these, I'm going to call them pucks. I don't know what else they're actually called, but in a hydraulic cylinder, you basically have a puck in the front that stays stationary, that caps the front. And then on your rod, you'd have another one that is affixed or attached to this shaft. And then as you have hydraulic fluid, it would go in between the two pucks and push it this way to draw the cylinder back in. And then on this end, whenever you want to push the rod out, it would push the fluid through here and push on the backside of that puck. Well, trying to get those pucks to slide out has been quite challenging. So I got pretty much all the hydraulic fluid out of the cylinder. I had unhooked the hose and ran it back into the reservoir, if you will, for the hydraulic fluid. And I started to get it broken apart, like I said. How this is, pretty much what I did so far, is this is partially out. It's very close to wanting to pop, but trying to get it just the last little bit has been quite challenging. But anyways, whenever this gets pushed back, this outer puck gets pushed back in a little bit, you essentially have this clip that retains it from obviously popping out when you don't want it to. And then you have this screw and washer would screw into here to pretty much do the same thing in the other direction. It's not really holding much load since the hydraulic forces are going to be pushing against it, but it just keeps it pretty much from getting pushed in farther than it's supposed to. And then on the end, you have your splitting head, which I have over here. And I just got this slid out, undid the bolt. I've got the drain or fill plug with the dipstick on it right here. And really that's about all there is to it. There's not a whole bunch. It's just the process of getting it apart. Now let me tell you something. Believe you me when I tell you, I didn't walk away from this out of a lack of trying. I've used brute force, running bolts to the end of that, just giving it everything I had to try to pop it out. And like I said, I did get it pretty close. It might not seem like much on camera, but that was a hell of a lot of work to even get it out as much as I did. But I even went so far as to put this in between two trees. I chained up the front end of it to the one, and then I had a strap on the other end of it on the bolt, and I had to come along and I was cranking on that, trying to get it to pull apart, ratchet straps, the whole 9 yards, and this thing would not budge. So I'm gonna change up my method just a little bit. I'm still going to try tying down the one end to a tree, and then I'm gonna use something a little bit stronger to pull it. Now, the 90% of you that are looking at this thinking, man, that's sketchy, you're right. But the 10% of you who are looking at it going, hell yeah, we should hang out sometime. Well, it's okay though, because I'm gonna be safe about it. This is PPE, baby. In all seriousness though, this is very dangerous. Don't do it yourselves at home. Do not recommend it. It's dumb, but I'm dumb, so it works, you know what I'm saying? And
yeah, I definitely am gonna wear the helmet, all jokes aside, because I have seen people, not with the tractor, but pulling out these cylinders themselves that come along much smaller than what the cylinder that I have here. And oftentimes that cylinder, whenever it finally pops free, goes flying. And I really don't want that to hit the back of my noggin. So I'm gonna wear this. We're gonna give this a shot, fingers crossed. And wish me luck. I guess if the video gets posted, you know I survived at least. Unless somebody was sick enough to upload it after I died. But anyways, let's get to it. Well, that didn't work, so we're going with design number 2. This is an old U-bolt from a truck that I hoarded. And hopefully this steel's a little bit stronger. We shouldn't slide off this end. Hopefully it doesn't want to wrap around. And then on this end we have these washers, and I screwed on the nut. So hopefully we shouldn't slide off that way either, even if this moves. Let's give this one a shot. All right, guys, even if it works, sometimes it's still stupid, but in this case, for me, it's stupid, but it worked, so I'm gonna take it as a win. Well, this is the whole shaft that's out, and these are what I was calling pucks. I don't really know what else you'd want to call it, or what it's actually supposed to be called, but you can see this one has a big ass nut that's welded that holds this rear one on. You have these two seals here, and then on the front here you've got this puck, and this is the seal, or at least one of them, that, yeah, you can see there's two in here that went bad on us. So I just need to go ahead and get some new seals and then replace that, get this thing rebuilt, and then get her slid back on in there and put back together. This actually worked out pretty well. Hopefully, this is actually on there pretty tight, but this might have kind of saved me from having this thing come flying at me whenever it popped off, kind of hitting this, and then this bolt being pretty good length to wrap around as a safety. So can't complain with that. I stand corrected. This is the seal that went bad. I don't know for sure, but I call it a hunch that that's the one. With this off, you could see a little bit better well, you couldn't see it at all, so you can obviously see it better. The seals that are on the inside of this as well, so there's 3. And that's our bad one right there. The one in the middle is all beat to hell too, chewed up. So definitely time to be replaced. All right, guys, well, now that we have that all tore apart, I will take out those seals and I'll measure them and try to find them online. I did find a couple that about a year ago, whenever I started taking this apart, that I think might be the right ones. So I just need to verify that, and if they are, I'll get those ordered and here. But for me, ending this off today, not the video, you guys will probably in about 2 seconds see me, but it'll probably be like a week, at least a week or so from now, before I get those in. So I'll get back with you guys whenever I get those in. We'll get them installed and go from there. Just as promised, I'm back. It's actually a few days later. I ordered a kit. I actually got it off of Amazon. It's a universal kit, but it did say that it will fit this hydraulic cylinder, which is a speeco. It is a 5-inch diameter for the bore, and then the actual shaft, the rod, whatever you want to call it, that's 2-inch. So we'll see if this kit works. I already took out the one seal, the outer dust seal that blew out really bad, and it looks like at least that seal is the same. And some of these, I have my doubts about some other ones, so we will try to do our best to make it work. So I'll show you what I got here. So this is the dust seal that I was talking about that blew out real bad right here, and lining it up with the new one, they look like they're the same size overall, so this should work. My concern mostly is with, let me see if I could get you guys a good look at it. It's this inner middle seal. And I don't know how well that's showing up on camera, but it's obviously in really, really bad shape. And I would assume, I'm just going off of colors, that this is the one that's supposed to go in the middle, but it is larger than this outer dust seal. Not by much. Exactly, it is 0.2 millimeters and half a millimeter. But I'm American. I don't go by millimeters, so we're just gonna try to make it work. That's what we're gonna do here. So anyways, I'm gonna get this middle seal pulled out. Everything else besides this middle seal looks like it lines up. It does also look like we have some extra stuff that we're not gonna need. If you look at the graphic on, of course it doesn't have a picture or label what seal is what number, but you can just, by looking at it, infer and kind of get the picture of what's going on here. It says there's a seal here in the middle, which would be on this shaft. I don't think that seal is in the middle on this, so we're gonna leave it. So we should just have this big, this larger band seal here on the outside. We do have that. And then this one, at least from the graphics, says that there is another smaller O-ring that goes beneath this, and then this one goes on the top. That all looks good, and it looks like it will fit up no problem. On this one, we have these two outer seals. And then on the inside, we have those three, which outside looks good, inside looks good, and then these two look good. So I think it's really just that middle one that I'm gonna get this pulled out and then see what it looks like and see if I could get this new one, wherever I just put it, this new one to fit inside of there. It could just be that this is just so badly worn. I mean, it's literally crumbling out, that it used to look like this and now it doesn't. So I'm hoping for that. So this is pretty much all that really remained of that inner middle seal of what came out of it. And it actually is a little promising, believe it or not. It looks like it is pretty darn close to being the right size, because that inner channel in here is deeper than the outer one here. So I think it's probably gonna be a pain to try to jam that in there, but whenever we get it in, it should fit in just fine in this middle here. So I'm gonna get the rest of these seals popped off, and then whenever we're going to reinstall them, I'll get you guys back in here and hopefully it goes smoothly. All right, so now with all the seals pulled off and it's cleaned up, you wanna make sure that you try to scrape out and get that surface where you're gonna be putting your new seals in as clean as you can. And then whenever we want to go to install our new seals, if you'll notice, there is a little black O-ring that's inside of this seal. And this O-ring is going to want to face the inside of the cylinder. So this facing this way, this raised part. This is going to be outside towards your implement where you have your cutting head or splitting head. This is inside the cylinder and we want to be facing this way. So let's try to get this guy worked in. I'm just going to try to bend it, push it to get it to drop down at that level. All right, I got that middle seal in and it was very difficult. It was a pain in the ass to get it in. And honestly, the seal's kind of junk. It's so brittle and stiff that whenever I had to work it in, it did have a couple cracks in it. So fingers crossed that it does not leak whenever we get this put back together, because that will, yeah, I won't be happy about that. And I really don't want to do this again. But for any of you guys who are going to be doing this, a couple tricks that I used, I tried heating it up a little bit to try to soften that rubber, plastic, whatever you want to call it, for the seal, to try to soften it up. And that helped a little bit. I tried going in from this angle. I tried going in from this angle. And honestly, the biggest issue that I had, I got it really close a few times, but if you recall, you had that, obviously this doesn't fit, but you had that O-ring in there like this. And what was happening is whenever I was trying to work this in there, it would pop the seal out, this O-ring out. And so trying to get both of these worked in and while keeping this inner O-ring in the groove, that was a challenge. So I ended up getting it and just taking picks and some screwdrivers, just, a soft tip, and just trying to slightly, very carefully work that O-ring in while I work the corner. It's a pain. So if you guys are doing this yourselves, just keep that in mind. Don't give up on it. And yeah, hopefully this didn't leak. So to get this other one in, one other thing to note, it probably would have been a lot easier with that O-ring if you were able to come in through the back. For me personally, I wasn't, because this distance, since you have to bend that O-ring in, kind of like bending it like this and then setting it, and then you start just working it around. It's a lot farther to go from this side. So while it would have been easier with the O-ring, it was more difficult and wouldn't fit because of the distance. So you have to go in through the front to try to get that to work in, or at least I had to. You guys feel free to try that yourselves, and I wish you better luck than I. So to get in this outer seal, and again, I don't think there was any seal on it or any O-ring on the inside. This one didn't have one when I pulled it out. So we're gonna want to put that side in, the groove side in. And this essentially is what I had to do for that middle seal, but this is obviously a lot easier. It's a lot closer. You don't have to bend it as much, and you just work it. So that's dropped in. Then we come to the back. This one's nice. It has a little break in it. So what you can do with that is just work it in. And I do want to offset where there's this cut and then the tear on the seal is right here. There's a couple on the inside, but it's the outer that matters the most, or the inner, if you will. The part that's going to be touching the shaft. I know I said inner twice. So with this one, you work this guy in, and boom. Oh, almost. All right, so that one's clipped in. And then you come to, let's see, I think it's this one. Yep. That guy and this guy. Your little flat O-ring is going to be facing out. So you want to put that one in first. That's going to be closer to this face. And then you'll put this round ring in behind that. Like this. And just work it around. Roll it. All right. So this should be ready to go now. This seal here. So now we just need to do either 2 or 3 on the outside, and then we can start putting this cylinder back together. So on these, same kind of thing. You have this split seal. Take that out. And then you have this inner seal. Okay, so now we have these both out. Once again, this thin O-ring goes in first, and this thicker, more squared off seal goes on top of that. So in this case, replacing it's going to be these two. So we want to drop in our O-ring first. All right, put that in, come behind it with our square seal. Okay, got that in. Now we take our new split seal, and that just goes on the outside here. All right, so we got that driven back in, which actually worked out pretty well because I was able to get that outer puck pushed into the cylinder as well. So the next thing we need to do is put this retaining ring in, which is really simple. Work with one edge, and there's a ridge in there, a lip. You just need to get this to seat inside of it. Boom, that's locked in. Now, we need to get this filled up with hydraulic oil. This is probably going to be a little bit too far for my screw, and by a little bit, I mean a lot of it. So what we're going to have to rely on is just using the hydraulic pressure whenever we get this filled up and running to push this puck forward where it will seat on this ring, which will then allow us to get this little set screw and washer to screw onto that outer puck. And then at that point, we should be done. I'm not too worried about overfilling this right now, just because whenever we get this cylinder filled back up, it's going to draw a whole bunch of this fluid down. And then after that's all filled up, then we'll come back and we'll get this set to the proper level. So for right now, we got this just about filled to the brim. So we're going to just lightly thread that in. Doesn't need to be tight. It's not pressurized. It's just a reservoir. And honestly, it wouldn't be bad just to leave it a little loose, so that way we can vent a little bit of the air, because there's going to be a ton of cavitation that we're going to need to push out since the cylinder and all the lines are empty. Alrighty, well, this video is starting to snowball a little bit. So I'm not getting fuel. I already messed around with this a little bit, trying to resolve it quickly off camera, but I figured that this might be a little bit of a good teaching thing for somebody who might not otherwise know. So what I did was I pulled off, well, I guess I undid the bowl. I thought I was doing the drain. Oh, excuse me. I'm not even in the camera. So I took off the fuel bowl. It goes underneath right here. And I intended to take off the drain. Most of these small engines, they'll have carburetors that have a drain on the fuel bowl, so you can check, unscrew that to make sure you're getting fuel. This was completely empty when I took it off. So I had to go downstream, or rather upstream, and I was moving my fuel valve back and forth, and I wasn't getting any fuel to come out through the floats. So the next thing I did was I moved to the bowl, the fuel bowl that's in this valve here, and I could take it off again to show you guys. Really simple stuff. Took that off. You do have an O-ring, so be mindful of that. At least on, this is a Kohler engine. So put that to the side. There's no fuel in there when I just took it off. However, if you take your fuel valve and shuttle it back and forth, you could see I'm getting fuel. So I'm getting fuel from the tank all down to the line. I know that I'm getting it to this point. Okay, so now with this back on, keep in mind our fuel is shut off. I want to turn that back on. So if we're getting fuel here, there's no reason why we shouldn't be getting it in the bowl. And from here to the bowl, you have what's called a float, which is this thing right here. And you have a needle and seat. And the float basically tells the carburetor when to open and close that needle and seat to allow fuel to come in. And yeah, the float does that, opens and closes. And then the needle and seat, it's pretty much just that. It's a little pointed plunger that whenever this float is up, it pushes it closed and blocks off the fuel. Whenever it's low, it drops down, and then that needle is supposed to fall out. Well, it looks like, in my case, I know you probably can't really see it on video. Let me try to get a better angle. All right. So you can see it's moving a little bit. It looks like it's not fully coming down. So I'm wondering if maybe that's my issue, that I'm getting a needle that's hung up. So I'm gonna try to pull out this float. All you need to do that is pull out this pin. You slide it out, and then the float will come out, and then so should that needle. So let me do that real quick.
That's exactly what it was. So now we have that fuel shut off, and I'll show you. And so this is that needle, and it just goes up and down. It's got a little rubber tip, plugs it off when you don't need fuel, opens up when you do. Well, I'm certainly stoked to have this thing back up and running. Probably gonna be putting this thing to work around the property here coming up very shortly. So definitely nice to not have to be swinging that axe as much. That is for sure. Well, I hope this video helped you guys out. I know there's other videos on YouTube for how to replace the seals on the log splitter, but as far as I'm aware of, this is the only one of this size. And yes, not all of you guys are gonna have a tractor to pull this apart with, but I guess the point of that is get creative. Just think outside of the box whenever you come across problems, and just try to adapt and think of new ways to get the job done if the things that you would normally do aren't working. In that case, that's exactly what I did here. So thank you guys all for watching. I appreciate it very much. Get outside, get wrenched on something, piss off your neighbor, disappoint your mom, and until next time, keep on keeping on.